Hey parents, I'm Dr. Matt, and I'm a pediatric family chiropractor. But I was not always a pediatric and family chiropractor. I was a dad first. And our first son, Micah, 13 years ago, struggled mightily with immune challenges. And it seemed like all the challenge with immunity and drainage, congestion that went along with sleep and colic and all those things always happened at the least convenient time. I specifically remember it seemed like every Sunday night, right when Target was about to close, my wife, Crystal, sending me out there to just get something to help him. I still remember the aisle. It was A37, where they had the over-the-counter decongestant, dehistamines, Tylenol, Advil, whatever we could find. And, I was that dad that was like, okay, maybe let's go dye-free. Let's look for something as natural as we could. But here was the problem. Nothing truly worked for Micah to calm that down. Even when we went to the strong stuff and visited the pediatrician for the antibiotics, the steroids, he still struggled. We felt really defeated as parents because, as you know, when kiddos struggle with immune challenges, it's not just that. It's the sleep, it's the colic, everything else that comes with it. Now, we didn't really know where to turn, but thankfully we had a family member that recommended pediatric chiropractic. So like any mom and dad, mostly the mom, goes online and looks in Facebook, Instagram, and says, okay, I want to learn more about this. So after a ton of research and figuring out, okay, what really is this? We thought chiropractors were more for back pain, neck pain, headaches, things like that. We stumbled upon pediatric chiropractic. And oh my goodness, how glad were we that we did? Our number one question is, how does pediatric chiropractic help kids? And that's what I want to talk through today, because I know that you have your story. I know you probably heard from a friend, a relative, a loved one, someone who said, hey, chiropractic has really helped me, but how does that work? I am so happy I found it, not only because I'm a pediatric chiropractor now, 13 years later, and been doing this now for almost 10 years, but I want to help you and your child, just like we helped Micah, to overcome that big challenge when he was around 6 to about 10 months old, right in the middle of all of that development. So most of the websites and things that you see, it talks about chiropractic as back pain and neck pain and things like that. And although spinal motion and that side of it is important, actually, it's not just the physical side of it. When we go deeper, the nervous system is so much deeper. And when we found that, we really saw the real, call it secret sauce to chiropractic, is within that nervous system and its ability to regulate what we call the central autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system goes beyond the tone, tension, and things that we thought chiropractic could deal with, which it can, but it goes deeper than that. Beneath that structure is an autonomic nervous system that controls the brain to the systems, organs, glands of the body. And what we found is that the symptoms that we're experiencing with Micah are actually tied to these systems and then tied to the overall nervous system, which is controlled by the brain and that central autonomic function. So when Micah started to get, really frustrated and that fever and congested, it made sense that, a little bit later, his gut was a wreck. His mood was a wreck. Emotionally, he was off. He would be colicky, and he was so young, he couldn't tell us he was having headaches and things like that. But everything within the nervous system was connected. What we loved about chiropractic when we first started was that it really gets after the cause. As a mom, we know that so much of what you see in your gut is like, okay, I'm not quite sure this is right. I'm not quite sure that's working. How are all these things connected? That's what we found with Micah. We found that it was all connected, and it was all connected by the central nervous system. What was the cause of it though? We weren't quite sure. But when we looked back at Micah's development, we unpacked his story and his history. What we found is that birth stress, birth trauma, plays a significant role in the way kids struggle later on. You can even trace this back further to prenatal stress and emotional stress during the pregnancy. For Micah, it was really birth stress. Micah had an emergency C-section. Not only that, but while he was developing in mom, he had low fluid in there, so he couldn't move as easy. And when that emergency C-section happened, it was not easy when he was delivered and came out. It left a lot of stress in Micah's upper cervical spine, which works in that area of the nervous system with so much of those easy autonomic functions: sleep, sensory, colic, immune drainage. All of those things were so much deeper than a spinal misalignment or torticollis or plagiocephaly. It was affecting Micah's entire nervous system, and we were seeing that on the symptoms side of it. So when we went into our report for Micah, I want to change screens here because this is what we saw on one of the Insight scan tests that they tested for Micah. And when we look at this scan shows the autonomic nervous system. And what that autonomic nervous system does is how we can measure it is we can look at thermography and temperature balance throughout that nervous system, from the brain right up here all the way down to the bottom of the spinal cord. And what happens in the nervous system is the brain picks up signals coming from down here. That's this loop, that sensory system, from all the systems, organs, and glands of the body, signals it to the brain, and then the brain has to come back and tell the body what to do. It really truly is this amazing feedback loop that's called afferentation. The body has to pick up good signals, and then it sends good signals. If there's signals that aren't so good, for lack of a better word, or that are miscommunicating, misfiring, or jammed up, misaligned, that are telling the body not such good information, that's going to make bad information come in and bad information come out. And what this might look like is up top here in the upper neck. And this is Micah's scan, where we see this counter rotation going back and forth temperature wise between C1 and C5. We know there's a lot of things that help the body drain: the eustachian tube, the sinuses, the back of the throat, everything in here that's supposed to help the body drain. When it's jammed up and tense and tight and temperature irregularities, it's not going to allow the immune system to drain and then to signal to work through that immune struggle. That was Micah's big challenge. So when we saw this scan, that made a ton of sense. Secondly, what's underneath the surface up here in our brainstem and in our cerebellum, which is just right in this back area of the spine, those are very much calming areas. They deal with sleep, sensory, emotions, and there's a lot of cranial nerves packed in here. The most important of which is the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, it's called the wandering nerve because it communicates with the lymph, with the lungs, with the heart, all the way down to digestion to create this brain-gut connection that allows our rest, relax, and digest system to activate. If there's a miscommunication here neurologically, that's going to cause our kids to get way more wound up, have way more behavioral challenges. In a baby like Micah, it was colic. It can even lead to constipation from that signaling right up here, simply because that feedback loop gets altered and the brain gets more in protection mode. It's almost like if you feel like you're running from a bear or you're in that fight or flight state, the body's not going to focus on sleep. It's not going to focus on digestion. It's not going to focus on really good immune function. So for Micah, when we saw this scan, it just blew our minds. We're like, oh my goodness, this is all working together and not allow his body to self-heal and self-regulate. Fast forward, when we started our clinical process with Micah and we dug into those challenges, it was so awesome to see his nervous system unwind. When we got our care plan, we were coming in 3 times a week. And after a couple weeks, we started to notice that Micah was draining better. He was pooping better. He was sleeping better. So the next time he got exposed to that virus, it didn't get clogged up here. It didn't turn into an ear infection. I didn't need to go to Target and find A37. That became a thing of the past because Micah was adapting well and it was working. And eventually that led to our whole family getting under care, us having more kids than our first kid, Micah. We've got 4 awesome, amazing boys. And we love chiropractic care because the neurological focus of it allows us to address the cause, help the nervous system, and really help things before they become deep-rooted struggles. And we just thank so much Micah for showing us that so many years ago. We know that if you're struggling with your child, you might have a lot of questions about this, and that's okay. I did too as a dad. Dads, we are the most wonderfully skeptical people because we want to protect our kids. But I guarantee if you're a mom watching this video, you have been researching and you have been digging in. And so we would love to answer your questions. We'd love to answer dad's questions to help you guys see how addressing the root cause and pediatric neurologically focused chiropractic care can help you and your kids. So we'd love it if you come through our process. We'd love to help you. I'd love to chat with you and hear your story, because just like Micah's, I feel like we could really help. Hope this finds you well. Love you guys. Take care.